5 seconds. That's exactly how long the taxi driver endured before he ordered that woman out of the car. She got into the cab with her nose turned up and an expression of disgust, as if she was about to do something deeply repugnant. Perhaps it was the simple fact of sharing the same air as the driver, a middle-aged man with a patience that, until that moment, he considered unshakable. "God forbid! What's that smell?" was the first thing that came out of her mouth. The driver, used to all kinds of passengers, glanced in the rearview mirror. He thought she was talking to herself, or on the phone, but no. She was shaking, as if she was having an allergic attack from the oxygen inside the car. Before he could even shift into first gear, she continued, "These seats, God in heaven, what kind of disgusting fabric is that? It's like you never wash them." The driver, taking a deep breath to keep his composure, put his hands on the steering wheel and decided to get on with the race. After all, she was just another annoying passenger. Wrong. That song? Really? Thug music? I demand that you turn it off immediately. The radio was playing an instrumental jazz playlist. That's right, jazz. The kind that plays in fancy elevators and expensive restaurants. But of course, to her, if it wasn't Beethoven, it must be some kind of threat to society. The taxi driver remained silent, but inside his head, he was already thinking of stopping the car right there. But then came the final blow, the cherry on top of the cake of unbearability. She leaned forward a little and, without the slightest hesitation, let go. "Can you, I don't know, stop breathing so much? That nose noise gets on my nerves." 5 seconds. That's exactly how long it took the driver to process it. The cab's engine had barely completed one revolution when he stepped on the brake in a dry, calculated manner. The car rocked slightly, but nothing compared to the shock on her face. "What do you think you're doing?" she snapped, wide-eyed. The driver turned slowly, with the patience of a monk about to abandon his vow of silence. "We're done here. Get out of my car." She blinked, incredulous. "You can't do that. I'm a customer. I have rights." But he had already unlocked the door. With a simple wave of his hand, he indicated the exit, as if he were showing the way to spiritual enlightenment. "Out!" She stood still for a few seconds, trying to process the absurdity of being thrown out of a cab after a ride of exactly 5 seconds. But instead of leaving with a shred of dignity, she opted for the spectacle. "This is absurd! I'll sue you. I'll call the police. I'll make you lose this ridiculous job." The taxi driver just smiled with the serenity of someone who has seen worse. "Have you seen how many cars are on the road now? Do you think any policeman is going to stop to listen to you whine because a driver refused to take you? Good luck with that." The woman snorted, let out one last look of pure contempt, and stomped off, as if she wanted to pierce the asphalt with her heels. The taxi driver closed the door, took a deep breath, and finally started the car. What he didn't know was that this story was far from over. She wasn't the type to take no quietly, and he was about to find out in the worst possible way. The taxi driver thought the nightmare was over. After all, she was just an insufferable passenger, nothing he hadn't seen before. But underestimating that woman's ability to turn a simple, "Get out of my car," into an event of biblical proportions was his first mistake. He carried on with his routine, picked up other passengers, and even forgot about the incident for a few hours. Only the peace lasted less than a commercial break. At the end of the afternoon, when he stopped at a gas station to fill up, he picked up his cell phone to check the messages. The group of cab drivers was boiling over. "Hey, have you seen this? There's a video of a taxi driver kicking a woman out of his car. It's going viral. Man, this is bullshit. It looks like she wants to fuck the guy." He frowned. What idiot taxi driver would have been recorded kicking someone out of his car? And then he clicked on the link. His own face appeared on the screen. The video started with the woman already out of the car, screaming like a Mexican soap opera actress, as if she had just been dumped from a moving helicopter. "This abusive driver threw me out of the car for no reason." The caption read, "Disrespectful taxi driver humiliates woman and kicks her out in the middle of the street. The driver had to see it twice to believe it. As if that wasn't enough, the poor woman even put a black and white filter on the video, as if she were starring in a historical tragedy. The comments were already pouring in. "This is absurd, poor girl. This taxi driver must be fired. Imagine if it had been an old woman or a child. Would he have thrown her out of the car too? Machismo. Men always treating women like dirt." The taxi driver's eyes widened. "What do you mean, machism? If it had been an annoying man like that, he would have thrown her out of the car anyway. The woman wasn't just annoying, she was dangerous." That's when he felt the first chill. She didn't just want to complain, she wanted to ruin his life. Before he could process everything, the phone rang. Unknown number. He picked up. "Minus Mr. Luis?" The voice on the other end was dry, too professional. "This is the cab center. We need to talk." He took a deep breath. It was done. 2 hours later, he was sitting in a stifling little room inside the cab center, facing a manager with a "I didn't want to be here, but it's my job" expression. "So, Luis, we had a serious complaint about an incident involving a passenger today." Luis crossed his arms. "I've seen the video." The manager scratched his head. "This is catching fire on the internet. People are calling you an aggressive taxi driver, a misogynist. Some even said you threw her out of the moving car." Luis laughed a short, humorless laugh. "Funny. The video doesn't show a second before I threw her out, does it? It doesn't show her treating me like dirt, even complaining about the way I breathe." The manager sighed. "Look, I understand. I really do. But social media is a problem. If you keep growing like this, we're going to have to suspend you for a while." Luis's blood boiled. "Suspend? So now all someone has to do is record a lying video, and that's it? My career is over?" The manager didn't seem surprised. He had probably dealt with cases like this before. "You know how these things work. What matters is not what happened, but how people perceive what happened." Luis knew that arguing was pointless, so he took a deep breath and decided to face the situation calmly. "What can I do to resolve this?" The manager pulled out a sheet of paper and slid it over to him. She made a formal complaint and said she would only withdraw it if you apologized publicly. Luis took the paper and read, "I, Luis, apologize for the inappropriate treatment of a passenger who trusted my service. I am committed to the respect and safety of all my customers." The taxi driver squeezed his eyes shut. "This reads like an admission of guilt. It's just an apology. You sign it, the woman deletes the video, and we move on. It was either that or lose my job." And Luis couldn't lose his job. He held up the pen. But before he touched the paper, something inside him flipped. "What if I don't sign?" The manager shrugged. "Then the company can't protect you. If it goes too far, you could even lose your license." Luis felt his stomach tighten, but then something crossed his mind. Why was she doing all this? It was obvious that she wanted revenge, but it seemed like a lot of work, just because someone refused to take her in a cab. Could it be that she did this often? The taxi driver narrowed his eyes. "Give me a break. I need to think about it." The manager nodded, but his gaze said, "You don't have a choice." Luis left the cab rank with his head boiling. If there was one thing he knew, it was that the more noise someone made, the more dirt they were hiding, and he was willing to dig deep. Luis didn't sign the apology. That was like shooting himself in the foot and still being grateful for the bullet. The idea of bowing down to that woman, who was clearly manipulating the situation, was unbearable. But if he did nothing, she would destroy his career. A strategy was needed. He picked up his cell phone and returned to the group of drivers. If that woman had done this to him, the chances were that it wasn't the first time. "Has anyone here ever had problems with this woman? I need some information." It didn't even take 5 minutes for the messages to start appearing. "Putz, I've already caught this crazy woman. She tried to make a scandal with me too. She complained about the smell of the car, the way I drove. Then she said I was looking at her in a strange way. This crazy woman almost made me lose my license. She said I was aggressive just because I asked her to put her seatbelt on." Luis felt a shiver run down his spine. The woman wasn't just annoying, She was a taxi driver scammer, and he wasn't going to be her next victim. Determined to find out everything he could about the woman, Luis started researching. The problem was that he only had one thing: her face in the video. No name, no information. But for that, there was a tool called neighborhood gossip. Luis had been a taxi driver for years and knew people from all over the city. All it took was a little push, and the stories would start coming out. He started by asking his older colleagues, the drivers who were always at the fixed points and knew all the news. "Oh, that woman? I think she lives near the center. She's always in trouble. I've seen her arguing with a mall security guard, a restaurant employee, even once in the market shouting because the cashier gave her the wrong change. She once tried to sue a clothing store, saying that the lights in the fitting room were too bright and caused emotional damage." Luis laughed as he listened, but he knew the hole was deeper. Then came the crucial piece of information. If I'm not mistaken, she had a problem with an Uber as well. It even ended up at the police station. But I don't know if it went any further. Police station. That was all he needed. Luis picked up his cell phone and called an old acquaintance, a childhood friend who now worked as a civil police officer. "Hello, Luis. Long time no see? What do you need?" "Information about a woman who's trying to screw me over." His friend was silent for a moment. "Is this serious? If it wasn't, do you think I'd call you?" The policeman sighed. "Look, I can't go around handing out classified information, but give me something to look for." Luis sent the video of the woman moaning on the sidewalk and explained the story. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Fuck. This woman has already been reported in about 3 different cases, and all similar. Bingo." The policeman continued. "There's a case from 2 years ago where she accused an app driver of harassment. The guy swore it was a lie, but with no evidence against him, he ended up losing his job." Another case was in a restaurant. She demanded free food because she found a hair on her plate, only to find out later that it was her own hair. But the restaurant owner preferred to pay, rather than deal with the headache. And more recently, she tried to sue a store, saying she slipped on the wet floor, but the cameras showed her throwing herself like an actress in a bad movie. Luis laughed. That was it. He had what he needed. "Man, send me everything you can. I'll put an end to this bullshit." With all the information in hand, Luis started his own campaign. First, he sent the driver's reports and prints of the conversations to the cab center. He showed them the other cases in which the woman had tried to run scams and argued that signing that guilty plea would only give her more power to continue destroying careers. The center remained silent for a while, but the next day, it received a call. "Luis, you're right. We're not going to make you sign anything, but you need to resolve this quickly." Great. No suspension. But the game wasn't over yet. He needed to turn the narrative around. He created a fake profile and posted it in the comments of the video. "Funny, this woman has done this to other drivers. I wonder if she's in the habit of trying to screw over workers to make a name for herself." Before long, more people started commenting. The game was turning. And to finish, Luis went on the final attack. He contacted a local newspaper. "I have a story for you, of a woman who ruins the lives of innocent workers on a whim." The journalist, sniffing out a good story, asked for more details. Luis sent everything. The following week, a story appeared entitled, "The Woman Who Likes Being a Victim: How a Taxi Driver Unmasked a Hoax." The article unraveled all her scams, with accounts from other drivers, traders, and even the case of the Uber driver who was unfairly fired. The impact was immediate. The original video, which had previously been hated by Luis, was now being ridiculed. "Ha ha ha! Look at the acting! Someone give this woman an Oscar! Worse, she does it all the time, how sick! And I almost fell for her story. Sorry, driver." The tide had turned. Luis not only cleaned up his reputation, he also destroyed any credibility that woman had. And that's when the final blow came. She deleted the video, but the damage had already been done. Only Luis didn't know it yet. She wasn't going to let it go, and the worst was yet to come. Luis thought he had won. He had cleared his name, turned the tables on that woman, and even had his story printed in a newspaper. But as every horror movie teaches, the monster never dies at the first fall. The woman disappeared for a few days, and the taxi driver almost began to relax. But it was only the calm before the storm. On Monday morning, he woke up to his phone ringing non-stop. The number was unknown. "Mr. Louise, this is the traffic department. Can you come in today to clarify some complaints?" He felt his stomach tighten. "Complaints?" "Yes. We've received multiple reports that you're acting recklessly in traffic, putting passengers at risk. We need to assess the situation." Louise hung up and sat on the bed, trying to process. She was fighting back, and now things could get serious. The mountain of complaints. At the traffic department, Louise was greeted by an inspector who looked like he'd had enough. "Can you tell me why so many people decided to report you at the same time?" He crossed his arms. "I think I do. Yes." The inspector raised an eyebrow. "So you mean the accusations are true?" Louise took a deep breath and began to explain the whole story. He told about the passenger, the viral video, her attempt to force him to apologize, the other drivers who had already been victims. When he had finished, the inspector took off his glasses and sighed. "Look, Mr. Louise, I'd like to believe that everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but there are so many complaints. People saying that you speed on purpose, that you're aggressive, that you ignore red lights." Louise felt his blood boil. "And I have a way of proving that all this is a lie." The inspector looked curious. "What do you mean?" Louise took out his cell phone and showed the videos from the car's camera. He knew that one day it could save his life, so he always recorded his races. The inspector watched a few clips and snorted. No infractions, no aggression, no crazy traffic, just normal passengers, normal runs. Louise crossed his arms. "Now tell me, why are you calling me in on anonymous complaints without any proof?" The inspector scratched his head. "Unfortunately, we receive a lot of anonymous reports, and we have to investigate. But if your images prove that you've done nothing wrong, there's nothing to worry about." Louise laughed. "Does that mean I can make a complaint too? Say that this woman is trying to ruin the lives of workers?" The inspector hesitated. "Well, theoretically, yes, but these things need proof." "Then I think it's time to provide that evidence." And that's exactly what Louise did. If that woman wanted to play at destroying careers, it was time to see how she dealt with her own poison. Louise knew she wouldn't stop. She wouldn't accept being contradicted. And that's when he had an idea. The next day, he called a friend who drove for hitchhiking apps. He explained his plan. "I want you to pick up this woman if she asks for a car, but record everything. I want to see if she tries the same scam again." The friend agreed, and it didn't take long. 2 days later, he received the message. "I did it. She tried it again. I've got it all on tape." Louise watched the video with a satisfied smile. There she was, sitting in her car seat, doing the same little act. "That car stinks of cigarettes. I refuse to pay for this horrible trip. The air conditioning is too strong. I'm going to sue this company." And then, the icing on the cake. "You're looking at me funny. That's harassment." The recording was gold. Louise wasted no time. He took the videos, the screenshots of the conversations in the group of taxi drivers, the messages from the other driver, and took everything straight to the police station. "I want to file a complaint against this woman for slander and defamation." The deputy watched the recordings, read the accounts, and let out a long sigh. "You know what's funny? That's not the first time I've seen that face here." It was official. The woman had a history, and this time she had crossed the line. The deputy opened an investigation. The woman was called to testify, and that's when the inevitable happened. At the police station, she tried to do what she always did: play the victim. "This is absurd. I'm a good citizen being harassed by abusive drivers." But the deputy wasn't in the mood. He took out his cell phone, played the video recorded by the app driver, and turned the screen to her. She paled. "So, ma'am, can you explain why you make the same accusations about different drivers, with identical stories?" For the first time, the woman had no answer. Her mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. The deputy crossed his arms. Mr. Louise here could sue you for moral damages, not to mention that defamation and false accusations are crimes. She stammered. I just wanted justice. Justice or easy money? Silence. Her scam was over. The police filed a libel suit. The story leaked to the newspapers, and suddenly, the woman who loved to play the victim became the joke of the town. She lost her job, became known as the woman who sues everyone, and, months later, ended up moving away. Luis went back to work as if nothing had happened. Customers would get into the car and ask, "Hey, are you the guy who stood up to that crazy woman?" He smiled. "That's me." In the end, the woman tried to ruin a taxi driver's life, but it was she who ended up destroyed. Justice served with interest and monetary correction. Did you like this video? Comment now and subscribe to the channel for more videos.